Before the Riderflex podcast episode of the day, a quick word from our sponsor and friends at Marketing 360.
Try the #1 marketing platform for small business. Everything you need from design to marketing to CRM. Learn more at marketing360.com. Marketing 360. Fuel your brand.
It's Lotspeich, right? Lotspeich.
You got it. Lotspeich.
That's what I thought. Okay. All right, man. We're going to get rolling.
I was actually, I grew up pronouncing it Lotspeich. And my brother and I, we a few years ago, we kind of wanted to go back to German roots and start pronouncing it Lotspeich.
I see. So okay, very cool.
Yeah,
very cool. So German family history. Have you like gone back and like found like, I don't know, great grandfathers or anything? Have you done anything cool like that?
I haven't done a lot of the genealogy, but my dad and my brother were interested in it, and so they were able to kind of find some of the tracing. Went back to southern Germany, but it's about only a quarter of my lineage.
I will tell you that. So you haven't sent your DNA into one of these places yet to do okay.
No, not yet.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a scary deal, right? Like, so I got I didn't know who my blood father was. So when I was adopted, and my mom lost track of the guy back in 1967. And so I never knew who my real father was. Well, anyway, somehow my wife talked me into doing one of those, it's escaping me what the name of it is right now. Ancestry.com or whatever, where you send your DNA in. Anyway, I'll just tell you, sometimes stuff comes back that you don't want to know about. I mean, what I mean is you find out like, grandpa was like, actually had like 2 other kids outside of his marriage. Okay. Yeah. We didn't know about that. That's weird. And then you find out all these things about people that are in the system because it'll tag them and say, hey, this girl is this guy's daughter. And then you're looking, you're like, wait a minute, hold on. That's not even, how's that possible? I didn't know grandpa had another, or stuff like that. So anyway, there's little secrets that come out about families when they send this stuff in. So, you want to be careful.
That's good to know, right?
Yeah. And for me, like when I was in college, like I had like a good time, with lots of girls and things. And so when I sent my DNA and I'm like, okay, it's like some 30-year-old guy like gonna knock on my door and be like, surprise, I'm your kid.
Any luck?
Oh man. Anyway, Sheldon Lotspeich on the Riderflex podcast from Carbon Chemistry. Sheldon, how are things, man? How you doing?
Hey, I'm hanging in there. It's been a crazy year, right. Entrepreneurship, it's always a rocky road. So
even without COVID, it's a rocky road.
Yeah, I think there was a major event going on last fall, and had some people come into me and they were like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do? And I was like, kind of feels like a Tuesday. So it just keeps coming, but doing all right. Charging forward, getting a chance to be at a trade show and engaging with our customers and industry. So really fortunate. Thanks for having me, Steve.
Yeah, man, I'm glad you're on the show. Tell us a little bit about your family and your early, where you grew up, some family stuff, and tell us about Sheldon before we get into carbon chemistry too much.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in Ventura, California, Southern California, but north of LA, and middle class family. Nothing really exciting. Parents were divorced when I was younger. I'm the youngest of 3. Okay. My siblings are all 4 years apart. My brother's 8 years older, Lejen. My sister's 4 years older, Kira. Okay. Mom and dad, Dale and Tiona. And, really just, I would say that because of the family divorce, which I think really gained in popularity in the 90s, it was a little backwards. They spent several years fighting each other, so we kind of declined as a family over my teen years. But luckily, despite all that, I had very loving parents, and when I was in sixth grade, my dad and sister were taking community college classes, so I joined them, and I took German, and then I got to go to a trip to Europe when I was 13, and it really opened up my interest in kind of the world and cultures, and sparked an interest for international business. After high school, at first I was going to go to my dad's alma mater, a religious college in Illinois, but ended up stumbling my way to the California Maritime Academy, where I studied international business and logistics. Came just shy of getting my degree.
What happened?
I got antsy. And I wanted to go work. I wanted to get my hands dirty. I got restless. I was on track to graduate in 3 years, but came just a few gen eds shy.
What? Okay, so you went out. You wanted to start working. All right. So, all right. Then walk me through your early career there. What'd you do before you became an entrepreneur?
So, being in the maritime business field, ports and terminals were kind of an option to get. And actually, first off, I was waiting for a job with the Military Sealift Command doing resupply for U.S. Navy vessels. It's like a civilian mariner job, but quasi-military. Sailed with them one summer, flew to Singapore, and then sailed the ship up to Vietnam.
I bet
Thailand.
Oh man, I bet that was cool.
Yeah, it was really cool. We got to meet up with the USNS Mercy and the hospital ship and do a resupply mission. So you shoot lines over, and you pumping fuel and potable water, and then helicopters are lifting pallets of goods over there they do underway replenishment.
You're doing all this stuff early in your career. I can see your passion for it. You're probably thinking, okay, I'm not sure exactly what I want to do yet, but I want to be involved in all of this, like somehow, right? Was that kind of the thought?
Yeah, that was it. I wanted to travel, want to see the world, and it seemed to kind of come into alignment. But I ended up just walking into the office of I interned for a company called Pasha, and they have a vessel that goes between California and Hawaii. And they also do other services, but I had interned there doing over high and wide cargo, so like out of gauge stuff. So if you want to send a gen set on a project and needs to go intermodal, so goes on a ship, gets put onto specialty trucking equipment, maybe rail, I'd be kind of coordinating all that. So I interned with them, and I visited the San Diego terminal one time, and I moved down to San Diego after leaving school. I was kind of waiting to hear back from Military Sealift Command, and they came through and finally said, no, sorry, we actually aren't continuing the program. So that job opportunity evaporated.
What were you doing for what were you doing for a living at that point? Were you like bartending, or how were you feeding yourself?
Some bouncing, yep. Doing Craigslist jobs. I was doing electrical meters.
All right.
I was doing odd jobs, just anything I could get off of little gig work to kind of scrape some cash together.
All right.
And then I got a job working terminals, and that kind of kicked off my early career. I didn't have a whole lot of work experience prior to entrepreneurship, but spent 2 years in ports and terminal operation, doing cargo loading and unloading, and working with longshoremen, and worked with a few different types of cargo, containers, autos, called roll on, roll off, and some break bulk.
Then what happened? Somehow you became a co-founder, or you became involved with a gas or oil company. Tell me about it.
Yeah, so my brother, after he got out of the Navy, he took an interest to the cannabis industry, and I think it came out of need. He had a loved one that that was really interested in weed, and he's like, this is getting expensive. So he kind of stumbled into cannabis
I see.
and got into extracting. This was like 2013 when closed loop extraction started to become a thing.
All right.
And concentrates kind of became a budding industry, if you will, of in the cannabis segment.
Okay, nice. All right. So your brother's into it. Now, let me just pause you just for a second. When you guys were growing up as kids,
Sure.
your siblings, your family, your mom and dad, were you all, was everybody like cannabis friendly? Like, was everybody like, oh, this is, it's just like having a beer, or was your family like super against it, or what was the culture with the family? I'm just curious.
Definitely more on the against it, but I didn't know anybody who had anything to do with weed growing up. It was completely off the radar.
So when your brother came back from
yeah.
when your brother came out of the service and he's like getting into weed, and he's like, hey man, I'm getting into this. Are you like, what are you, crazy? Like, how'd that conversation go?
I think when we talked about it, he came about it in the same light that I've come to really appreciate, and that's a structural injustice, right? Like you go into the science and the facts of the matter, and it doesn't add up. Like in California in 1996, they passed the Compassionate Care Act, which allowed people to have medical marijuana. They're allowed to have it. The problem is that it didn't create any infrastructure for growers, for distribution. So it basically it allowed for people to be consumers of it, but it made it so that people got persecuted as drug dealers if they actually provided it. So it took 20 years before 2016, where California passed recreational, that the industry actually finally started to be able to legitimize as a business. So when he talked about it, it was patients, it was people who they were able to replace pharmaceuticals with cannabis for pain management or dietary needs. And it was like, wow, that's really cool. Okay. It was kind of like something I had no idea about, but it wasn't so much that I fell in love with the industry and went and got involved in it. It was more that I was trying to find my own way in life. and interestingly enough, there was a structural issue where the established companies that sold specialty gases to industrial processes wouldn't support this industry because, it wasn't legal and it's cash business, and for all the understandable reasons that, a nefarious industry wouldn't be supported by publicly traded established businesses. And so my brother said, hey, you know how to transport stuff? Can you bring in gas? And that was it. I said, sure. I mean, theoretically,
that's how that ties together. So you started that gas company to help your brother's cannabis company, basically.
And not just him, right? He said, if I'm feeling this need, other people are.
Okay.
And so he identified a market opportunity because of a need, and that is a need to be supplied.
Were you like, okay, so, and you called it Imperial Gas Company, that was 2016. Were you like, okay, I don't even know how to like register for an LLC. Like, how do you do that? Were you like, what?
You got it. My brother was like, all right, well, you need to have a business name, and if it's not the same business name, you need to have a DBA. And so just started hitting Google and got a business attorney and got the thing formed and just kind of went headlong into it.
How'd you fund it? I mean, did you have some savings? Go ahead.
Yeah, no. Well, we started off. Short answer is, I got a $10,000 loan from family.
Okay.
And that was to buy inventory after we had already scraped together some tanks and driven them around and got people to buy them.
Okay.
So did a little bit out of pocket, and then from there got a whole container of product. And then I also borrowed $9,000 from a couple friends. So
okay.
$19,000 for a full container of product is really kind of what got us to having a branded product and an established product.
How about that? Okay, very good. So you ran Imperial Gas. Walk us through the transition. How did you then start? Let's get into carbon chemistry. So for the listeners, by the way,
Sure.
carbonchemistry.com. Why don't you walk us through like the transition from Imperial Gas into carbon chemistry and how that happened and why you did it? Go for
Sure. So Imperial Gas, made every mistake in the book.
it.
Just had to figure out accounting, brought in some other shareholders and having meetings and figuring out direction. And to be honest, I still haven't figured all that out, but we get better and we iterate. Um, and so, we were running the gas company and it was increasing. We had some growth, went from $0 to 680,000 in revenue in a year and a half.
Wow.
And that was huge.
That's
That
big.
was like, hey, wow,
That's,
we're a business.
that's
Yeah.
great.
And of course we were only able to pay our bills and service our debt. But the issue that I saw going forward is that we didn't have the capital or the infrastructure to really compete as the industry was rapidly growing.
Okay.
Eventually the established players would participate, or other companies that were friendly to the industry that had the infrastructure would start to dominate.
Okay.
So we kind of saw a sunset to our opportunity window as the business stood. But during Imperial Gas had started getting into liquid solvents like ethanol, isopropyl alcohol, acetone. So had been doing a little bit of that.
Making them or sourcing it or go ahead.
Yeah, no, we're mainly a specialty chemical distributor. So we source, we partner with manufacturers. Our goal is to go out and find goods that, in most established industries, you have like an industry specification or something that's best practice. That's kind of the quality of goods at the right price for the process. Cannabis as a new industry and a constantly evolving industry. Everybody's still figuring that out. There's so many different types of goods. So as a supplier, you're kind of doing a mixture of learning the application and helping the customers find the right stuff and then supplying that to like-minded people.
Gotcha. Okay. All right. Did you and your brother start carbon chemistry together, or who's on the cap table? Who's ownership there?
Yeah, no, we started at 50-50.
50-50.
He had been, so while Imperial Gas was going, he had been kind of doing some research into powders, bentonite clays, and aluminas to use as adsorbents. And adsorption is a process where you hold back target compounds by using a media.
Okay.
So think Brita filter, right?
Okay.
Your water goes in, that carbon's going to pull out things like heavy metals. And then it's going to let the water go through, and it's now been purified. So our products do a similar thing to cannabis oils.
I see. Okay, so I can almost envision he's like, hey man, I'm having to like find all this stuff and I'm having to call around to different manufacturers. I don't know who. I don't have a simple one-stop shop place to go to help me with this. Why don't we create a wholesale distribution company that makes it easy for people to get these supplies? That's what it sounds like. Am I summarizing that right or not?
I think it was a little less master plan-esque like that. And it was a little bit more like, okay, we've been selling products to people. There's obviously a need. I mean, this industry needs good business people, good partners more than anywhere else I've seen.
Amen.
It's just,
you're right.
They even call it the green tax. When companies do business with the cannabis industry, they charge more. And so it's a very backwards arrangement. Normally a nascent industry needs help. So basically he was looking into this and said, did some research and was like, hey, this actually could have a very viable benefit for processors. And it was a little bit more, he was already moving out to Colorado and we were trying to expand our business to Colorado.
Okay.
And the business operating environment in California can be a little arduous for small businesses.
Yeah.
And so instead of expanding, decided to actually relocate to Colorado.
Okay.
And Imperial Gas Company was winding down. You know, we kind of were like, okay, this isn't going to work. So we kind of shut it down.
Okay.
And with the knowledge of liquid solvents and the new product line that my brother is bringing on with the powders, we said, hey, look, we both have a side. Let's just put them together and just keep doing this.
Okay.
And it
cool.
became carbon chemistry.
All right. Very good. All right. And as carbon chemistry stands today, give us the 3-minute elevator pitch. Carbon chemistry. Go for it.
Sure. Carbon chemistry, leading supplier to cannabis oil manufacturers. We supply high quality professional grade products that are sourced and delivered specifically for the processing application. The reason that we do this is that we believe in improving lives by supplying others. We are a chemical distributor, but we're only focused on one industry. So instead of having a giant catalog and focusing on price, we focus on how to constantly improve and carry the right products for our target customer base.
Okay. And your target customer base is somebody who produces oils, cannabis. Go for it. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. We say processors, cannabis oil manufacturers. Essentially, everybody talks about CBD, but CBD comes from industrial hemp. You grow the hemp, and then you have to extract the oils, and then you have to purify them. And then that becomes a bulk product, which can then get dosed into edibles or capsules or anything like that. So our niche, our segment that we support are the people who are extracting cannabis oils or processing them to improve them.
But basically, anybody that's a processor is your customer throughout now, and you can sell your products can be sold across the country, right? You don't have to worry about state lines and all that, right? So you can sell to anybody.
Correct. And international. We have some distribution in Canada, and we've had some, we've done some business in Colombia and had some interest from Europe too.
Very good. How many employees?
Right now we're sitting at about 15 employees.
15 employees. Okay.
We had peaked out at 35 at the end of last year.
Okay.
And just a couple months ago, we had to do a significant layoff and restructure. And,
what happened?
What happened? We built up. I think the company has had tremendous growth, and we were doubling every year, and we were exceeding our expectations. And to go, a key part of carbon chemistry, my brother and I started it with $5,000 each.
How about that? I like that.
$10,000
seed money. I like that. $10,000 seed money. Awesome.
And to be honest, we didn't make any money with Imperial Gas. Basically threw everything into it and left with nothing. So that $5,000 was like the last bit of the last money that I had. And then, we weren't able to get payroll for a number of months. And even so, we actually exceeded our expectations over and over and over. And there was a demand. And at the beginning of 2020, we had 2 product lines that we were out of stock for 4 months because we were getting full container loads. But I had 1 ton of silica gel sitting in our pallet for the year of 2018. Didn't go anywhere. So January 2020, we sold 7 tons in 1 week.
Wow.
And you get to a spot where, ocean containers take a couple months to move around the world. It has to get transferred onto a truck or rail in order to keep the cost down. And, unless you've got $600,000-$700,000 to throw at inventory, you can't have multiple container loads moving around. You're kind of capped by, in our case, our limiting factor was finance. So we didn't have the funds to bring in enough inventory. So I had to build up the organization across the board to kind of bring in the competency to keep the operational integrity as we scaled.
Have you taken on outside cash at all? You and your brother, besides you mentioned some family borrowing early or back for the gas company. But with carbon chemistry, have you taken on any outside cash from angels or anybody else?
We've taken on some very expensive debt, to the
Okay.
tune of 1.5 million that we personally guaranteed.
Mm, mm.
So there's that. But other than that, we had a small convertible note raise that we brought in about 200,000, but over the course of 6 months. That was just friends and family. But other than that, no, we haven't had any outside injections.
Okay. Let me ask you, can you share revenue? Can you give me, I don't know if you want to talk about revenue. Do you want to give us a general idea? Like, is this a multi-million-dollar deal? Are you guys doing I don't know how much you want to
Yeah.
share.
No, sure. I mean, in 2018, in our first, so we founded the business in November 2017.
Okay.
And in 2018, we did 1.5 mil in sales. And to be honest, our target was 500,000. I thought that
Yeah,
that's what we were
great.
going to do.
Yeah.
Did 1.5 in 2019. We did 3.6, and
Nice.
2020 we did 6.2.
What?
But we were at a rate, we were targeting about 7.5 by June, and then the second half of the year slowed down. And this year we've been averaging about 400,000 a month. So we're down over last year, but at the same time, at the end of the day, we're supporting an industry that has ups and downs.
Yep.
And specifically our process, just talking to some of our customers and consultants that are working on innovating, it's arduous, like the States, there's not really good R&D programs to say, hey, I'm going to take this controlled substance and I'm just going to go over here in the lab and do whatever I want with it. The systems aren't good for it. Like California has a program where you can actually submit a proposal to remediate product. And then the California Department of Public Health and Safety can then approve that and allow you to go and remediate something. And this is like, let's say you test hot for pesticides that it's outside of spec. That is now that entire lot of cannabis can't be sold.
Right.
However, there's processes that you can do in order to remove the pesticides, but you have to get approval. And so we're in this spot where, the legal cannabis market has pretty high tax rates, effectively 15 to 50% on the whole supply chain. And this is all, and then on top of it, non-deductible expenses. So like all of our plant touching customers that are trying to do the right thing are just embattled from every direction. And then it's still federally illegal. And they can't bank, it's like, there's all these things that work against our customers.
I know. And I'm guessing some of your customers, even though you love them, I'm guessing some of them pay slow or end up not being able to pay because of various reasons. And then you're like, okay, yeah, right. I mean, I'm sure you got some of that in there.
We talk a lot about our experience with the industry, and I think it's just, there's so much need for people to just be real these days that I think it bleeds into business too.
Yeah.
And, I've just been, reading a lot of leadership stuff online and whatnot, and it's like, lead with vulnerability, be vulnerable. But I didn't really know what that was until I just started talking to people, and I'm like, yeah, man, this is really hard. And, or talking about the struggles in a really real way, and seeing the reaction on people's faces when they're like, they have to fake it till they make it. They don't get a chance to just share their struggles and let out a good cry or something, and we all, shoot, it's been a tough year across the board.
Yeah, man.
Nobody's just like, wow, everything's so perfect and fun.
Well, being an entrepreneur and business owner, period, is just super ass hard. I mean, it's very difficult to start and grow and maintain a brand. Like if you've never tried it yourself and you're listening to this episode, yeah, man, it's super hard. Being an employee, no offense to the listeners, but that is easy. You want to
So I gotta say on that, you know, I forgot what it's called, but you know that feeling where you're standing at the edge of the cliff and you're like, you fantasize about like jumping off or whatever, that thing in the back of your brain.
yeah,
I definitely, in entrepreneurship, you have these little like fever fantasies of like, oh, just having an hourly job and I don't have to administer
right?
the benefits and I clock
Yes,
out and have a life after hours. Like
that's right.
you have some sick fantasies about it, but like I wouldn't, I don't know if there's any going back,
Isn't that
it is
weird?
so
Right?
rewarding.
Right. Isn't that's the catch right there. It's like, okay, yeah, there is no clocking out and not worrying and just go, I'm going to go home now and make my little dinner and watch my little TV shows and play with my dog and not stress. Like that's what employees do. Owners don't do that, right? We never really fully relax. Like we're working all the time. Even if we're not working, our brain is thinking about the business, right? And so you're right. It's weird. It's like, okay, this is super hard and it takes a lot of time, but just like you said, there's also so many benefits and rewards and satisfactions and things that come from being a business owner that I probably wouldn't trade it. Here's a perfect example. I'm gonna leave this afternoon on Friday and get in my Jeep around 1 o'clock and drive up to the mountains, and I don't have to ask anybody if I can do that. Right? And so there are some
That's right.
trade-offs.
Yeah. And I would say that, shoot, how do you put a price on
Right.
having the ability to make choices in life and choose what
That's
to
right.
do? But
That's right.
in what I find like rewarding, one case that really stands out to me, in early 2019, late 2020, kind of in that period, we had moved to a new office. And I had two employees that bought new cars within like the same week of each other.
Okay.
And it was a really weird feeling because
Mm-hmm.
it was almost like them being like, oh, I'm so confident in how everything's going,
Yeah.
right? Like I feel secure. And I'm like, wow, you feel like, it's almost like you have less existential dread about this business than I do. This is amazing, and it was really cool because it was almost like a vote of confidence, for somebody to
Yeah.
be like, oh, I'm not worried about things. I think everything's going really well and I think it's going to continue to go well and I'm willing to make commitments accordingly.
Which is nice, but at the same time, isn't it fascinating how employees, because I've heard people say they'll say something like, well, I can't really start a business and I can't be involved with a startup. I need to work for a regular company and just get a safe job. They'll use the word, I just need to work for a bigger company so that it can be safe. And I'm always saying, I'm like, bro, there are no safe jobs. Like, what are you talking about? You get laid off at any time. Anything could happen. I don't, people always tell me that. It gets on my nerves. They're like, oh, I can't do startup. It's too risky. So I'm going to go to work for this Fortune 500 company. And then that same guy is calling me like 2 months later saying, well, they had a layoff. Can you help me find something else? I'm like, see, I told you.
And I think that what you just kind of put out there is a little bit of calculus that is hard for people to do until they see behind the curtain.
Right.
Like it's not until you experience the personal growth that can come from the challenges, the arduous existence of being in entrepreneurship, that
Mm-hmm.
suddenly you realize that the safety is a lie, right? It's totally
Totally.
grass is always greener. And I mean, for me, I look back and I jumped off into the deep end of entrepreneurship 5 years ago.
Yeah.
And I I'm closer to achieving my childhood dreams of being in a position to have an impact. than I ever would have been. In fact, that's why I left. I saw a problem on the terminal, and with one switch, we could have saved a couple $1,000,000 and just got ignored because of just the way structure and clunky bureaucracy. And so I got to a spot where I got sick of that glut and that inefficiency and that disconnect from what's actually being done. And
now you've built a,
and I've grown so much.
Oh,
Yeah,
what you've learned, what you have learned, and how you've grown personally in business from April of 2016 to now. I mean, that is so valuable. I mean, all the things you've learned about creating, starting, ups, downs, cash flow. I mean, just the employee, all of it. I mean, that is so valuable, what you've come through. Isn't it interesting too? I always thought I was a CEO and a COO and a president for a few $40 million companies before I became an entrepreneur. And so, but I was always an employee, right? I mean, even though I had a C-level position, I was still an employee. And I always thought entrepreneurs were just always cocky, right? Like every entrepreneur I would meet, I would be like, man, that guy's kind of got a little bit of an arrogance. Like he's kind of got a swagger. And it's like almost every entrepreneur I met had this, I'm trying to think of the right word, this kind of swagger, confidence, like they had been to like a guy would act if he had been to war and came back and had scars and battles, and he would just be, nothing fazed him because he'd been to war. That's how entrepreneurs act. And I always watched how their behavior. Now that I've built Riderflex over the last 5 years and built it into a $1 million boutique recruiting firm, now I understand why, because it takes a lot of grit and effort and balls and whatever to build a business that far. And once you get it going, you kind of understand, like, wow, yeah, this is super ass hard. And I built a multi-billion-dollar business. And anyway, my point was going to be, this is why entrepreneurs always have a little bit of swagger, just a little bit.
The continence of a boxer, you can't get up there and be like, like you just gotta know the weight of your own hands. And
that's right.
It's interesting because there is a confidence, right? Like
there is.
I mean, we need to be like children. We need to have an open mind in order to really grow. And I now love watching toddlers as they like do something and see the effect of their action. And I feel like that for me has been the entrepreneur experience, because there's one thing nobody can take away from me. I'm like, built this with my hands.
Yes.
Like I feel it. I know what it took.
Yes.
And I know the impact of my actions. And there may be somebody who's stronger, smarter. I guarantee it.
Yeah.
But I am who I am, and I'm very confident in my actions and my methods, and they've been validated by, just getting a chance to just do it, just trying.
Couldn't agree more. And now no matter what happens in your life, damn, you're still young. How old are you?
I turned 30 in January.
Wow. Bro, you've started two companies. You got a company right now that's a multi-million-dollar company, and you're 30 years old. That's congratulations. Not a lot of people. There's not a lot of people that can say that. That is a very small group of people walking around in the country that can say, like, hey, I'm 30 years old. I have a multi-million-dollar company. Congrats. I know it's super stressful and anything, but at this point, if it all crashed tomorrow, you can walk around knowing that you built a multi-million-dollar company, right? It's a major accomplishment, no matter what happens. At this point, go ahead.
Yeah. I was just gonna say, especially, I was homeless for a bit before going to college, and
are you serious?
School, and that was
wow.
Yeah, I kind of glazed through some of that, but
wow.
That was actually part of the reason I ended up leaving school, was I wasn't going to be able to get financial aid for another semester. But
wow.
it's easy to kind of go back and just be like, oh, well, it was all fancy. But
when you meet people
yeah.
now, when you meet people, when you meet somebody that's kind of down on their luck like that, and they're in a situation like that, right? Like they quit college, can't find a job, they're living with their buddy, they're sleeping on the couch, whatever. When you meet people like that,
Mhm.
I have two reactions. I don't know how you feel, but I have two reactions to it. My first one is, okay, I kind of feel for you, bro. Let me find out what your story is. But then I talk to them, if I find out they're not getting their ass up and hustling and trying to make a difference and they're just laying around complaining, then I'm quickly like, okay, no, no, you're creating your own world and you ain't trying to fight out of it.
I might be a bit of a hypocrite here, but I would say that when I take a bit of a stoic approach. I think stoicism comes naturally to me, but the most common uh, trend I find with a lot of people who aren't where they want to be is there's usually something that we're doing, right? Like you could sit down and talk about somebody's life and analyze their world view, what their desires are, what their experience is, what their resources are, and you could give them a clear path forward. And in my experience, a lot of time people won't do that because it's not their fault.
Right.
It's their experience is a product of other people's actions and choices,
Yes.
not theirs.
Couldn't
And
agree more.
so
Yep.
um 𝐒𝐴𝐿, extreme ownership.
Yeah.
It, there's something to be said about that, like stoicism of like, sure, you got a crappy place to sleep. You don't know where your next meal is coming from. You don't even know what you want to do in your life. You've got some responsibilities that you've signed on, whether it be credit card debt, a kid. You're way out of your depth. There's always a route forward. And I was working with a coach, and and by the way, I'm also married. I married my wife a year and a half ago. We met at the Maritime
Cool.
Academy.
Cool.
She is my biggest supporter, and
Awesome.
it's just having somebody through entrepreneurship is so helpful.
You got that right. Let's
Shoot,
just take it.
you get
Yes. Let's take a deep breath. Let's just take a deep breath right there for everybody listening. Yeah. If you
yeah.
have a partner or a spouse or whatever that you can lean on, that is supportive, that understands you and takes risks with you and lets you wake up in the middle of the night at 3 a.m. in a panic attack, sweating in your bed because you're worried about cash flow, and they give you a big hug. I mean, that shit matters, man. I mean, it's huge, right? It's big.
And there's a couple there. I proposed January 2018, 3 months after starting the business. I was penniless, no idea what was going to happen. And what
Hey,
had held me back, I mean,
listen, honey, honey, it's gonna be fine. Listen, I really don't know what I'm gonna do. I'm in debt. I have no cash. I'm gonna start a business. Don't really know if it's gonna work, but come on, come marry me.
and she said yes. I mean, like, the thing is that it was interesting because I realized that she loved the hell out of me.
Yeah.
And I was at a spot where I was like, I can't go and start a family and then fail. And it's interesting because that's something that I've talked to a lot of other people before, especially guys who, I think we get a bad rep for having commitment issues. But the reason we won't commit is because it's like a lack of confidence. Like, I can't provide. And so I'm going to save up more acorns and I'm going to wait without really understanding that could actually harm the situation. And what gave me the confidence to propose was the understanding that could go down on a ball of flames, could go right back to being homeless, penniless, and she'd be right there next to me. And we just figure it out and go from there.
Wow, man, that is so cool. Does she help you in the business or does she do something else?
Yeah, she's involved.
Okay.
And it's been a great growth opportunity. Actually, we had some layoffs and she was like, yeah, I'm willing to do that. And she's been working for free and learning marketing and kind of going in a different direction.
Wow.
And
Wow.
she's kind of a second wing entrepreneur, like she
That's
joined
pretty cool.
on because I was, because I was doing it, but we were in this one office. I was literally looking over her shoulder because of the way she was sitting, and I had been doing the work that she was doing, and so it was like it felt really belittling to her. She was just like,
Why are you watching?
she had confidence issues. But she went back to her old job, moved to Hawaii for 6 months, and then came
Huh?
back. We got married, and she took
Oh,
a
I see.
completely different
I see.
role, and it's been good. I mean, she's capable, and
Cool.
we all struggle with our confidence issues, but
Sure.
that's life. You just got to do
Totally.
it.
What is your brother? Your brother's still involved, right?
He is, it's I've read a lot, unfortunately founder issues can be common.
Oh yeah.
Something I recommend,
Yeah.
it's like it, it's best to have things as detailed and organized from the onset.
Absolutely.
Two chiefs don't make for anything good.
Mhm.
You need to have some kind of, you have a lot of these things figured out, and
Mhm.
conflict resolution mechanisms are important. Like I think we missed the boat on a lot of things, and so we're really working on re-establishing our communication.
So let's just take a deep breath right there for the listeners. I want to take a pause. Listen, if you're thinking about starting a company or you're just getting started, please get a detailed operating agreement that explains how things work, where the voting power is, who makes the decisions. The operating agreement, in my mind, is basically a document that only gets pulled out of the file cabinet when shit's happening, when shit's going down, right? Like you refer back to it to go, oh, okay, if this happens, here's what the operating agreement says or whatever. I talk to so many people that are like, oh, well, I'm starting a business with my friend Mary. And I'm like, okay, do you have the operating agreement? Oh, no, we don't need that. I've known Mary forever. We're just going to do it together. And, it's fine. It's going to be fine. I'm like, no. 5 years from now, you're going to need an
Yeah.
operating agreement when Mary gets on your nerves and like pisses you off and steals 100 grand from the bank that you don't know about. No, get an operating agreement. And another thing I would recommend is, I'm not a big fan of the 50-50. Like if there's anybody listening,
Mm,
I do think it should be
never.
50, 51-49. Like you need to have clarity for somebody to make decisions when stuff's going down. Anyway, that's my thoughts. I don't know what you want to add to that or if you disagree.
Oh gosh, I cannot tell you how much I do agree. It's such a
Okay.
simple thing, and it's one of those things. It's like
Yeah.
it's like going through the jungle just to find out that there's a staircase right around the corner. I mean, it's
Good one.
I,
I like that. Good one.
I would go back. I've made not every mistake in the book, but I've made some painful ones. And
Yeah.
it's again that lack of clarity, lack of conflict resolution. It's amazing how much a pain in the butt it
Yep.
can be.
Yeah, totally agree. So I'm glad you're working to get some of that cleaned up. Man, I know we're almost out of time. Damn, I could talk to you for another 2 hours. You got some really good insights, Sheldon, really good insights. I think what's great for this
Thank you.
episode for the listeners is just all the stuff you've been through. I mean, damn, you should come on and probably do another. I'll call you in a few months or so. We should do another episode because you can share so much. I think that will help aspiring entrepreneurs or early entrepreneurs with the things you've learned, if you seem to be willing to share those things to help people. Cause I feel you have a good heart and you want to share because you're like, listen, here's what I went through. This is what I suggest you do. Like, don't, like you said, I love that analogy. The staircase is right over there, but you went through the jungle. That's pretty good. But two final questions really quick.
Yeah.
And again, for the listeners, carbonchemistry.com. Um, two final questions since we're almost out of time. If you could call the young man sleeping in his car in Southern California, just think back to one of those nights where you're laying there going, what the fuck am I going to do with my life? Like, I got to get it together. What would you tell Sheldon if you could call him? if you could go back in time and call him on the phone?
I love this question because I've answered it before and it hasn't changed.
Okay.
Everything's going to be okay.
Everything's going to be okay. Yep. Everything's going to be all right. It's going to be all right.
I'd tell myself that last month.
You know what? I'll just tell you, I'll give you a little insight on what I say to that for myself now is as you get older, you probably don't realize any of this yet because you don't have any pains or aches or body issues or health issues, but I'll be 54 this summer. As you start entering your 50s, stuff starts happening to your body. What I say to people is, look, if you have your health and you're not in pain, the rest of it's gravy, whatever else is happening in your life. If you're waking up and you're not in pain and you're healthy, just be thankful. And you're good to go. Anything else is gravy.
I would say, I would extend that to mental health too.
Yes.
You got to take care of yourself. You got to be right.
Yep. Totally. Last question. If you could define your core purpose in life, if you could put your core purpose into a sentence now, and most people's core purpose kind of changes or tweaks as they move along or get older. But right now at your age, if you had to put your core purpose into a sentence, and let's not tie it to family. So let's move it away from your wife and not tie it to family. So family aside, what is your core purpose?
Balancing humanity and resources.
Okay. That's going to be important when that's going to be really important when the planet has like 15 billion people on it and there's not enough resources to feed and shelter and clothe and water them, right? That's going to be important.
When I think back to kind of what has driven me, it's been trying to find that balance and, and it's what drives me forward. And it's what I could see being a core seed to the decisions of what I want to be involved in the future.
Sheldon, great stuff, man. Great stuff. Really appreciate you being on the podcast.
It was a pleasure. I'd be happy to do it anytime.